The shadow of Edinburgh Castle. Edinburgh Castle loomed high above the city like a dark sentinel. It sat perched on an ancient volcanic rock, weathered by more than 1,000 years of history. Its walls were thick and cold, rough-hewn stone blackened by centuries of smoke and sorrow. The wind howled around the battlements, carrying whispers from the past. Echoes of battles, betrayals, and broken promises. By day, the castle was a bustling tourist spot. Visitors snapped pictures and chased stories of kings and queens. But by night, when the crowds had gone and the gates were locked tight, the castle became something else entirely. A place where shadows moved a little too quickly, and the air hung heavy with secrets that refused to die. Beneath those towering walls lay a labyrinth of dungeons. Narrow, dark corridors where the walls seemed to close in. The silence was so thick it pressed on your ears. This was no ordinary prison. It was a place of suffering. Men left to rot in chains, their screams swallowed by the stones. And in those depths, something restless stirred. The story begins not with a ghost, but with a man. George Mackenzie, a name spoken in fear, whispered behind closed doors. A man who once ruled these dungeons with a cold hand and a cruel heart. His deeds were brutal and merciless, leaving a stain on the castle that time would never wash away. But it wasn't just history or legend. Some claimed Mackenzie's spirit never left, that it haunted the dungeons still, angry, vengeful, waiting. What kind of darkness lingers when a man's cruelty becomes something more? What shadows crawl in the corners of forgotten cells? And what happens when those shadows reach out to touch the living? You'll find out. But first, you need to understand the man behind the legend. George Mackenzie was not a man you wanted to meet in a dark alley. Born into privilege, he climbed the ranks of Scottish power with a ruthless ambition. Known as the Bluidy McKenzie, his name struck fear across the land. He was the Lord Advocate, the king's top lawyer, and he used the law like a weapon. During the killing time, when the Covenanters fought for their faith, Mackenzie was the hammer crushing their resistance. He sentenced hundreds to prison, torture, and death. Men and women were dragged into his dungeons, often never to be seen again. The dungeons of Edinburgh Castle became his kingdom. The stone cells, damp and dark, were filled with the cries of the innocent and the desperate. Mackenzie ruled with a cold heart and an iron fist. His cruelty was whispered in taverns and behind closed doors. But power has a price. Some say the darkness he sowed in life never left him in death. There were rumors among the guards, tales of strange noises and flickering shadows. Whispers that Mackenzie's spirit lingered, trapped in the very cells he once controlled. Some nights, they said, the walls would echo with the sound of chains dragging. A ghostly figure pacing the dungeons, watching, waiting. Was it guilt, revenge, or something far darker? One thing was certain: George Mackenzie's legacy was more than just history. It was alive, and it was angry. The stairway to the dungeons was narrow and worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Each step down felt like sinking deeper into the earth, into darkness itself. The air grew colder. A damp, musty smell clung to the stone walls, heavy with decay and forgotten despair. Here, in these cramped, windowless cells, men and women were left to rot. The only light came from flickering torches far above, their flames casting long, dancing shadows. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the distant drip of water, and the faint, haunting sound of chains sliding along the floor. You could almost hear the prisoners' whispers, their prayers swallowed by the cold stones. Some spoke of torment, of days and nights without end, of hunger gnawing at their bellies, of hopelessness that sank like lead in their souls. And then, there was something else. A presence. Not quite human, not quite dead. Guards who patrolled these halls told stories of footsteps echoing behind them, though no one was there. of sudden chills, so cold they felt like ice biting their skin. Some claimed to have seen a shadow, tall and silent, standing just out of sight. Watching. The prisoner's suffering had carved its mark deep into these walls. And some say it never left. It lurked in the corners, waiting for the unwary. But what if the very stones could remember? What if the pain was trapped, like a slow poison seeping through the cracks? The dungeon was alive, with memories, anger, and something else. Something waiting to be released. The first signs were small. A sudden chill in the air, even on the warmest days. Guards stationed near the dungeon spoke of hearing whispers just beyond the edge of hearing. Soft, urgent voices that vanished when they turned to listen. One night, a young soldier named Alistair was on patrol. As he passed the old cells, he felt something brush past his shoulder, cold as death itself. He spun around, but there was nothing there. His heart pounded in the silence that followed. He wasn't the only one. Tour guides, too, told stories. Visitors would sometimes hear footsteps behind them in empty corridors. Some spoke of faint scratching sounds on the walls, like claws trying to claw their way out. A group of tourists once reported a chilling encounter in one of the prison rooms. A sudden gust blew through, though no windows were open. Then, a voice whispered a name, clear, cold, and angry. No one dared to speak after that. Even seasoned staff said they'd felt unseen hands tap on their shoulders, or caught fleeting glimpses of a dark figure standing just beyond the torchlight. One guide, who had worked at the castle for years, claimed she was pushed hard enough to stumble once. But when she turned, no one was there. These were not isolated incidents. The castle itself seemed alive with restless energy, and it was gathering strength. It started with banging. Loud, violent knocks echoed through the dungeons, shaking the stone walls. Doors slammed shut without warning. Torches flickered and died, plunging corridors into pitch black. Visitors felt sudden, icy blasts that stole their breath. Some said they were pushed, hard, by an invisible force. One night, a group of tourists huddled in a prison cell reported scratches on their arms. Long, deep marks as if claws had ripped through skin. A security guard swore he saw a shadowy figure standing over a sleeping colleague, its eyes glowing with hatred. Cameras captured strange lights flickering in empty cells. Microphones picked up whispers, low and angry, just beyond comprehension. The poltergeist was no longer content to watch from the shadows. It wanted to be seen. It wanted to remind the living of the pain it had endured, and the cruelty it had inflicted. This presence, the McKenzie Poltergeist, had become a force of raw fury. A dark echo of a man who refused to rest. In recent years, the castle opened its doors not just to tourists, but to those who chase the unexplained. Paranormal investigators armed with cameras, recorders, and sensors descended into the dungeons. They measured electromagnetic fields that spiked without cause. Thermal cameras caught fleeting shadows where no one stood. Recorders picked up strange noises, footsteps, whispers, and sudden bangs. Voices that seemed to call out names or cry out in silent agony. Some investigators claimed to have felt an oppressive presence pressing down on their chest, making it hard to breathe. Others were startled by sudden cold spots, so frigid, it felt like the breath of death itself. Skeptics argued it was all tricks of old stone walls, drafts, or overactive imaginations. But even the most hardened doubters left the castle unsettled, their cameras and instruments mysteriously malfunctioning at key moments. One famous investigation recorded a chilling EVP, an electronic voice that whispered, "Leave, now." The castle seemed alive with a restless spirit, one that defied explanation. What haunted those dungeons wasn't just memory. It was something caught between worlds. And it was waiting. Today, Edinburgh Castle stands as one of Scotland's most visited landmarks. By day, It bustles with tourists and history lovers. But by night, the castle belongs to the shadows. Ghost tours wind through the dark corridors, led by guides who know the stories and the dangers. Visitors share tales of sudden chills, whispered warnings, and feelings of being watched. Some claim to have seen a tall, dark figure standing just beyond the flicker of torchlight. The McKenzie Poltergeist is no mere legend. It is a living nightmare, etched into the stones of the castle itself. For those who believe, the castle is a place where past and present collide, where the sins of a man can still reach out and touch the living. And if you ever find yourself alone in the dungeons, listening to the silence, be careful what you hear. Because sometimes, the dead don't stay dead. They wait, they watch, and when the time is right, they reach out.
Thank you for hanging around until the end of our tale. Every view is appreciated. If you have enjoyed it, please hit that like button and considering commenting and subscribing.